So there's nothing like a true story.
That's right. Well, I'm definitely a strong believer that it can be reversed.
Yeah. And we today in today's society, we love true stories, right? So,
Right.
So I think it's really going to be nice to tell your story, because it's a story that can help a lot of people. The fact that you're not only living as a former diabetic, but you're able to eat a diet that most people would say is contrary to diabetes.
That's right.
Rich in carbs, right? So,
I have the story to tell. I'll say that.
Exactly. So I think we should just jump right into it.
Okay.
And start from the beginning. So when were you diagnosed? You could tell us, the story behind it as much detail as you want to, because being diagnosed with diabetic is a different kind of experience for everybody. But everybody knows it's a life-changing moment. When
Sure.
you're now going to have to prick your finger 2 or 3 times a day.
Right. I'm 67 years old.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I bet it's been 30 years, and I was not diagnosed as diabetic then, but as of 30 years ago, I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic.
Okay.
So, here I am, 37 years old, raising a family, and I'm going, how can my sugar level be? I think to be pre-diabetic is between 100 and 120 for fasting glucose. And I was, eating the standard American diet. I said, I'm not going to become diabetic. I'm going to fight this. And, guess what people did back 30 years ago? Watched your carbs. All right. I mean, there's nothing wrong. I was eating the standard American diet. So I said, okay, no more corn, can't have potatoes, so I was at the grocery store, and I was very conscientious about it, reading all the labels and making sure I did not buy anything with high carbohydrates, and try to control it that way. And then try to exercise a little bit, because I was up. My highest weight was 197, and I'm 142 now.
Wow.
And so that's how I would control. I mean, the doctor never said anything. I'd ask the doctor, well, how do I beat this? And he goes, it's just it's just what happens as you get older. You're just going to have to live with it. And we won't put you on any medication until you become diabetic. And I said, how long will that be? He says, the average. He said the average is about 5 years. Once you've been diagnosed as pre-diabetic, that it will go into full diabetes.
Yep, and that's pretty accurate. Actually, some studies show that it could take even longer than that. But yeah, it's a slow burn.
Yeah.
So you weren't put on medications right away because you were at your pre-diabetic level, right?
Right. So that was 30 years ago, and I defied all odds because I hit the gym, and I was really watching the carbohydrates, really watching it. And so I was never diagnosed as full diabetic until 5 years ago. So I lived with it. I thought I was doing fantastic. I was fighting the thing, right? But I was watching
change, right? You stay consistent.
Yeah, but it was portion control. It was going hungry. It was, not feeling satisfied, for 25 years. Well,
about diabetes anyway.
Right. And so, what happened? We moved to Florida from Minnesota, and my wife and I enrolled in a cooking class.
Okay. Yeah.
And boy, did we fix some good food. Oh, yeah. Lots of good food. And my weight started going back up because I had lost some by then.
Okay, so you learned how to cook.
Yeah, I learned how to cook. And I'll kid you not, one of our classes is we fixed some duck dish, right? And the chef, I don't know, he's 350 pounds. And the chef comes in and says, now this is great. We had a bunch of duck grease there. And he took a piece of white bread, slopped it into the duck grease, and stuffed the whole piece of bread in his mouth. And of course, I was right after him. I did it too.
Duck grease. Oh my goodness. Well, you learned later on how bad that was, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What medications did they put you on once you were diagnosed with diabetes?
So they put me on metformin.
Okay.
And so I was diagnosed about 5 years ago. I was full diabetes. I had several fasting blood sugars for 2 or 3 years in a row that were over 130, and they said it's time to do that.
Yeah.
Should I tell you what else I had at that point?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Tell me it all, because I know it could be a long list for some, but
Okay, at the same years I was fighting high cholesterol.
okay.
So I had high cholesterol, and they put me on a cholesterol medication.
Yeah.
High blood pressure. I was on 2 blood pressure medications.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, then I was on metformin, so that's 4 medications.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Here's a side story. I was on antidepressants for 30 years.
Okay. Wow. Mm-hmm.
So I was on that. So that's 5 pills. And then I was on another one I had very bad acid reflux and heartburn.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was on a medication for that as well.
Yep.
So I was on 6 medications.
A lot of medications. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of medicine. I know, of course, having diabetes, having high blood pressure, cholesterol, having to pop these pills every day. And especially, was it frustrating, especially knowing that, you were following your doctor's recommendations and still developed diabetes?
Yeah. And I would say even what was more frustrating than that is my doctor's recommendations were take pills.
Mm-hmm.
I received no other advice
Really?
except
So you didn't get any dietary
Oh
counseling?
no, none.
Wow. Yeah,
None. I fired him. No, I did not. And I was the standard American thinking, this is the way it is. He just made me believe that this is normal.
Mm-hmm.
This is what happens to Americans. This is what happens when you get older.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get these diseases, but you can take some pills and we can manage it. We can manage it.
Yeah, that's a sad thing because it's not uncommon. And being a medical provider myself, it's really because it's education that we've got, that we're using to the best of our ability, to use medicine to treat the symptoms instead of having learned, how to reverse the cause of disease, right?
Right.
Through diet and lifestyle change. So eventually, though, you didn't stay. You were a smart man. So at some point, you figured it out yourself. How did you figure it out? What led you to the right path?
So this is a good story. So I would say 6 years ago, before I was on all the medications, I was on some medications, but continuing to progress with these metabolic diseases. A friend of mine said, you need to watch Forks Over Knives.
Okay.
And handed me a book and said the book on Dr. Neil Barnard's on reversing diabetes. And I go, yeah, right. And he goes, let me come up and I'll cook you a vegan lasagna. And so he came up and visited my wife and I, and we talked a little bit, and he made the vegan lasagna, and it was awful. I hated it. And when he left, I go, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I said, and I didn't watch the movie, didn't read the book. 5 years ago, when I had my great doctor's appointment where I got on 2 more medications, I had 6 medications. I was feeling depressed at that point. And we had a dinner with my friend who'd been talking about this. And I was there and I was kind of whining and complaining. I just had my doctor's appointment and I'm on 6 medications. And he said, whole foods, plant-based. And I said, I'm going to go watch that movie. And I'm going to read that book. And the whole world opened to me at that point.
Wow. So that is something I've watched myself more than once. The books, I've read them, and Neil Barnard's doing great things with his program. So you finally were able to understand through watching those videos, reading those books, a new approach to diabetes, right? Because I'm sure at the time you were thinking low carb, gotta
Right.
restrict yourself from so many foods. But really, if you just simply switch to a whole food, which for a lot of people, they don't understand what that is, but a whole food plant-based diet, right?
Right.
And that's a diet that's rich in carbohydrates, right? Plants, fruit,
Exactly.
greens, grains, lentils, beans, right? And you were able to start eating that. So how was that experience?
So the experience was, I didn't know anything else except for that movie and that one book. I still had not tapped into the large overall community of doctors and podcasts and programs. And so I just dug in and said, we got to make some of these foods. And the food I made was awful. So we lost a lot of weight right off the bat. And when I say we, my wife decided to go on it with me.
Yeah.
I couldn't cook.
That's support right there. That's some support.
I got better at it. And the food is absolutely delicious. And the best thing about it to me was no portion control. No, you eat till you're full. You eat, you're satisfied. And my weight just kept dropping off, and I just kept feeling better and better. 6 months after that appointment, where then I was on 6 medications, my numbers came back. My cholesterol had dropped from 240 to 145.
Wow.
That was on medication. My blood sugar went way down.
Okay.
My blood pressure was going down. So I said, I want to go off these medications.
Okay.
And the doctor goes, well. I said, I want to go off them. They said, well, come back in 6 months. Because I said, if my cholesterol is 145, I don't know what it will be once I go off the medications. But I want to do it because by then I was getting a little bit smarter, or maybe not smarter, but more knowledgeable, side effects of medications. And I said, I need to get off of these. That's my goal. So I went off of them, and 6 months later, I went in. My cholesterol was 185.
Okay.
Without medication.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. My blood sugar was, my fasting blood sugar was great. My A1C had come down to 5.7 at that point without medication.
Wow. Do you remember how high your A1C was?
I think, I wasn't super sick. I think my A1C was about 6.5.
Okay, got it. You're right at the diabetic level. Yeah.
Right. Fortunately, we caught it, and I started doing these things before I got way off the chart. But if I hadn't done it, I would have just continued to climb that path and gotten worse and worse.
That, and most diabetics can confirm that too, that, even with conventional diabetic diets and diabetic plans, you're either going to manage a condition so that it stays somewhat the same and only goes up incrementally over time, or some you do it all, like my wife, you do it all and it still goes up. The A1C just goes up and you still experience the complications of diabetes.
I've got a story to tell here, though.
Yeah, you do? Okay, all right, let's go. It's not even done.
That was 4 years ago, like a year after.
Yeah, it's good to acknowledge accomplishments, though, that you're progressing in the right direction. But go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I decided to kick it in. My new goal is to be under 150 for cholesterol. So I decided to kick it in, and I absolutely were used to, maybe I slipped a little oil in. Absolutely no oil in my diet. I do use a little bit of salt, but not much. No refined processed foods, none. Absolutely none. And it's minimally processed. I'll eat pasta, right? I guess that's considered minimally processed.
Minimally processed, yeah.
And hit the gym and exercise more. Took to heart about getting the right amount of sleep. Well, my last numbers came in, and my cholesterol level now is 145. Yay!
That is awesome, my man. I think someone just pushed the door open, but it's all good. But that is great. That is great. And it was when you went forward with the whole diet, right, of whole foods, minimally processed, and eliminating oil, right? That's something a lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
Or know to do, right? Eliminating oil, which is what we teach on Diabetes 180 as well. It's a big part of our program. So that's interesting that brought that cholesterol way below the danger zone.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I was very, very excited when I saw those numbers.
okay.
So my last doctor's appointment, can I tell you about that?
Please.
Okay. So this is what was really fun. And this just happened 3 days ago.
Mhm.
So I went in for my annual wellness Medicare checkup. The nurse walks in the room, sets herself up to the computer, says, well, first, I'm going to pull up the medications that you take. And I said, okay. And she sat there and she said, something's wrong with the system. And I go, well, what? How come? She says, well, no meds are popping up. I go, well, I don't take any. She turned around and looked at me and I said, you're 67 years old and you don't take any meds? I don't take any meds. She said, I've never seen that before at a 67.
Wow. You almost made her fall off her chair.
I'm loving it. I'm just loving this stuff. And because, man, this is a gift. It just works. And so when she was done, the doctor comes in, sits down at the computer, niceties, how you doing, et cetera, et cetera. And he's looking at the computer and he goes, well, it appears we're not treating you for anything. And I said, well, isn't that wonderful? You're not treating me. That is correct. You're not treating me for anything. And he looked at me and says, Mark, your cholesterol is 145. I said, yeah. Your A1C is 5.1. That's what it is now. I said, yeah. He goes, you're an overachiever.
Wow. And you know what? As amazing as that story is, it does not have to be uncommon. It is uncommon, right? It's uncommon for us providers to sit there and see someone at 67 years old without medicine, looking as young, as sharp, and handsome as you are, and you're enjoying your lifestyle. It's not even a diet at this point for you. It's a lifestyle.
It's not a diet. A diet is something you come off of. This is the food, and it's fantastic. It's great food.
Man, that is a great story to end on. So there's one question I always want to ask, in closing. What would you tell those who are skeptical about, whole food, plant-based, vegan diet, no dairy, no cheese? They think, oh, what will I eat? It's so restrictive. What would you tell those who are still skeptical about this approach?
That's a tough one because, when I first got all of this success and how good I felt, I wanted to go tell the world. And people are very skeptical of it, and you can't make them do it, and you don't want to sound like a fanatic. And so I think back of what my friend did, and just every once in a while, did you watch that Forks Over Knives? Just every once in a while, when I complained, Whole Foods plant-based, so I don't know. I think you got to be kind of subtle to it. What I do, if someone does ask about, well, how do you do it? And I said, well, if you're really interested, go home and watch Forks Over Knives. And I keep a copy of these. I have 2 or 3 copies of this book, and I'll give it to them. And said, if you're really interested, watch the movie, read the book, and I'll let that do the work instead of having someone who's not a doctor, to say, and then let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. And I've had a couple people to make the change because of that.
Well, that is some words of wisdom for sure.
Last thing, it's health span, not lifespan, right? Mm-hmm. It's how healthy we can live our lives. And you got to have some goals. And last week, I just found out I'm going to be a grandfather time. And so, boy, do I have a goal to stay to this program. I want to live. I want to be a grandpa.
I love it. Yes. That's a noble goal. To be around kids, grandkids grow up. So many people want that in their life, and they can have health span, not lifespan. I love it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Okay.